channel. My name is Shannon Rivkin. This video is on potential market reactions to the upcoming US presidential election. Now that we're within 1 week of the election and volatility rising quite noticeably actually over the last week or so, it's worth exploring the potential consequences from different possible outcomes in the election, and I'll start with what I view as the highest likelihood outcomes in that election. First one is, would be if simply the current polling holds up and we see a clear win for Joe Biden. Unlike 4 years ago, and certainly the polls then lost a lot of credibility, but this time around we've seen a very stable race, relatively speaking. Joe Biden's had a pretty consistent lead, really stretching nationally between 7 and 11%, and that really hasn't closed as we've come to the finish line. A little bit different as well because so many people have already voted before the election, whereas 4 years ago you did see Hillary Clinton's numbers start to suffer as the election approached, especially after the FBI announced an email investigation. So while undoubtedly polling had its flaws last time around, I think the likelihood is that it's going to be more accurate this time. And if that's the case, the likelihood is not only are we going to see a win for Joe Biden, we're going to see a win for the Democrats in the Senate, which would give them the Senate, the House, and the presidency. Short-term implications, I think, would be a relief rally because the stimulus bill, the COVID stimulus bill, which has been held off pending the results of the election, I think would likely go through. The Democrats have been the party pushing for the highest spend. Estimates were of up to $2.2 trillion, and that may even be enhanced if they were to win. And that, I think, would flow through the market pretty quickly. But also an infrastructure bill would probably follow pretty quickly next year as Joe Biden starts to put his agenda into action. Our longer term implications, and I'm sorry my head's in the way, look, no doubt increased corporate taxes, which may take the sting out of the market in the short term, but Moody's and other analysis out there have come out and said that the economic plan proposed by the Biden administration is likely to have far greater impact on GDP and on unemployment over the period of the next presidency. So overall, a higher tax rate but an improved economy should probably even itself out, and over the long term perhaps have a greater impact on the market. Another big plan of a Biden presidency would be to start transitioning away from dirty sources of energy to clean and renewable energy. This is going to be a real signature, I think, of this next presidency. And now with possibly two houses of government, two branches of government backing him up, I think that's something that you can expect pretty quickly. And one possible issue, at least for part of the market, is a tougher antitrust environment for big tech. Largely, Republicans have been friendly towards the big tech companies in Silicon Valley, but a greater focus on potentially breaking up some of these bigger players may have an impact, and that may pull down the tech sector with it, even though I expect it's probably only going to impact the bigger names with very large market power. Next most likely outcome, Biden presidency, Republican Senate. Right now, some of the the polling experts out there have, Biden presidency, likelihood of up to 90% or so, whereas the Democratic Senate is more like a 65-75% prospect. So I think that's clearly the next most likely outcome. This would be, I think, problematic for the market in the short term. You've already started to see Republicans in the Senate perhaps smelling the environment, start to talk about lowering the stimulus. In fact, when no doubt President Trump could have used a big win from a COVID stimulus bill, the Republicans in the Senate ultimately hosed that down, suggesting that they weren't willing to go above $500 billion, and for the first time in 4 years, talking about the deficit and what an issue that is. And I expect that they're just doing what they expect to be able to continue under a Biden presidency, and so as not to sound inconsistent. over the 4 years as well, it's likely that we'd see the Republicans try and really prevent any big wins for the new president, as we saw during the Obama presidency. Seeing a Republican win the next election was a major priority, and I think that's going to flow through to the market in the short term, at least. Probably the implications from a Democrats' clean sweep that I mentioned would go away. So higher corporate taxes probably wouldn't get the support that it needs, and likewise probably good news for tech. So potential long-term impact on the market, on the economy, but possibly good for the market in the short term. A close contested election is, I think, the next most likely result, and this is really for a Biden win or a Trump win. Doesn't really matter. I think there are reasons to be bullish for a clear win on either side, but a close contested election could be a bit of a mess. In 2000, when Al Gore and George Bush went to the Supreme Court to contest a recount in Florida, the markets fell 8.5% in the rough 6 weeks between the election and when Al Gore finally conceded. And I think given this environment, which is very polarized, very divided, this is going to be far uglier and last longer, and probably play out over more than just one state as well. This will probably be even more polarizing considering we've just seen one liberal justice die within a few months of this election, and replaced by the poster child of the right wing of the Supreme Court now, and now there's a 6-3 conservative bent on that Supreme Court. So any favourable rulings for Republicans in a contest, I guess, is going to probably not play out well among the population. And I think if Democrats end up losing, I think it's going to be very hard for them to accept that loss as legitimate. And likewise, just because of the rhetoric that Donald Trump's been using, any loss for Republicans in a close contest, I think would likely come with Donald Trump suggesting that there was voter fraud, and who knows how that could play out with his followers. But once that kind of quietens down, and if there is a sell-off, ultimately I do think we're going to see a recovery. So that'll probably be excellent buying in the short term, frankly, even though it's going to be volatile and a bit of a mess. But either way, you're going to see the environment that we've had over the last 6 months, post the lows of the pandemic, supportive monetary and fiscal policy that should really support higher levels in the future. The next most likely result would be a win for Donald Trump, but a loss for the Republicans in the Senate. This, I think, probably isn't a huge issue. Maybe some of the big legislative agenda items that Donald Trump would like to put into place, such as replacing the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, that would probably be off the agenda, but I don't think that would have a big impact on the economy or the stock market. Largely speaking, the Democrats have been more supportive of COVID relief, so the immediate need for stimulus, I think, would still be satisfied, even though over the next 4 years you'd probably see a really divided government. And finally, a win for Donald Trump and Republicans hold the Senate. I think that's the least likely outcome. I haven't mentioned the House because the Republicans basically have no chance of regaining control of the House, which the Democrats currently hold. So what this result would be is exactly what we are in the status quo right now. Overall, that's been good for equities, over the last 2 years since the Democrats took the House. But overall, before the pandemic hit, the stock market performed very well, and a big spending relief stimulus bill, I think, would likely come in the short term, and Republicans would probably no longer have a concern with the deficit that they are currently talking about, with the view that they're probably going to lose this election, and that, I think, would lead to a relief rally. So there are a number of reasons to be concerned about this election, but there are a number of reasons to think there could be a relief rally in certain events as well. But I think the most likely outcome would lead to a relief rally. So while the market seems a bit shaky at the moment and the volatility is rising, a clean sweep for Democrats, I think, would lead to a good result for the market. And understandably, a lot of people are starting to position themselves that way. Anyway, if you like this video, please click like and subscribe, and we'll be back to you next week with more videos.